It is the Blitz here on 94.1, San Antonio Sports Star. He's Joe Reinagel. I'm Jason Minix. Our good friend RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com joined us on the Buyers Barricades guest line. Spent Monday night in Arlington amongst a bunch of empty seats and Houston Texans fans.
He looked happy, too, I thought.
Well, there was beer involved.
Hey now, happy holidays. I don't know if y'all know this, but apparently there's going to be a Disney Plus version of Spurs Knicks on Christmas. That's the coolest thing happening in sports right now, as far as I'm concerned. I can't wait to see Wemby as Goofy.
Well, he's a little goofy anyway, so that's all right. No, that will be fun. I saw that.
We don't have to talk about any other sports. We're good. We don't have to talk about any other sports.
We're required by law to talk to you about the Dallas Cowboys, RJ.
Great. Awesome. Cool.
Now, you make your living talking about the Dallas Cowboys, a rather nice one at that. And look, there have been some really good regular seasons recently, and now we're dealing with this, and we don't know how to handle it. And I think a big part of it, we all saw this coming, not this bad, but I don't think many expected a great year for the Dallas Cowboys, although I don't think anybody thought it would be this.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be bad, right? Like, we've all seen bad football teams, whether it's the Cowboys or you root for somebody else. It's, you can kind of tolerate that, but it's another thing to be just completely devoid of hope, and completely lacking in any sort of positive emotion. I had a great time at the game, and it was I hadn't been to a game in the stands in a very long time, in 5 years. And so it was an interesting experiment just in that sense, but it also was among the most lifeless crowds I've ever seen. Like, this was like, I'm super pumped. I know you guys are too. The Wicked movie comes out this weekend. This was like going to a Broadway show, or, going to like a middle school play. It was like, we all bought tickets. We're all here. The concessions or whatever, they kind of stink. I've never had that such poor stadium food, by the way. That's an incidental sort of piece of damage, just like the roof falling apart. But that being said, I mean, at no point was anybody like, hell yeah, we got this. Like, it's just going through the motions right now. That's really all it is.
Well, that's, right now, what are you going to do, right? I mean, you hope to get some work for the young guys, and maybe that makes them a little bit better, but this team's not going anywhere. So you start looking for next season and how you can improve this team. And, I don't know, RJ, I think the Cowboys need to do something drastic with this football team.
I think that they just need to do something, right? I mean, because they didn't do anything. And that's part of the problem. Is my biggest criticism of them over the offseason, and to be clear, there were a litany of them, but number one was that they didn't have a North Star. And you can disagree with somebody's North Star. You can disagree with their ultimate objective, what they're trying to accomplish. Obviously, at the time we were talking about the pending extensions for Dak and CeeDee. If they had not done the Dak extension, I would have killed them for it. I would have said, this is stupid, this is dumb, he's a franchise quarterback, he should have done it, whatever. But at the very least, they would have been committed to that, right? At the very least, they would have said, we're going to go this path. We understand it's a risky proposition, but we're committing to something. We have an actual North Star that we're hunting towards. But they didn't. They just kind of stood in the middle. They accomplished nothing. I mean, all that anybody involved with the Dallas Cowboys has done over the last year is age. I mean, they've moved no closer to one goal or another, whether that's succeeding or tanking. And so, I mean, I don't think they have to do anything drastic or dramatic. I think they just have to start taking themselves seriously and acting like a real NFL team.
A real NFL team. And again, to be competitive. Now, Micah Parsons says they're really good. We just don't see it.
Good football team is what he said.
We're a damn good football team.
They are. So, and Mike McCarthy says they practice well. So they must be damn good Tuesday to Saturday.
This is not I know that I, from time to time, have, a shot at either one of you, maybe both sometimes. This is not that, I promise. I know that there are some boomer people who are upset with that kind of comment, who feel like whatever, the fact that he's saying it on a podcast certainly doesn't help the situation. To be clear, I don't have an issue with the podcast, and I don't have an issue with Micah saying it, because I think to succeed at this level, you have to believe some stupid things, right? Like you're among the most talented and confident people in the world, and you are where you are for a reason. But that being said, if that moment, if that quote does exemplify anything, It's that nobody with this team can shut up and take their licks. And that's just kind of who you are right now, man. I thought the most telling quote that anybody had after the game was CD when he said, look, everybody just wants to embarrass us. You're man. That's exactly what's happening. So you just kind of have to shut up and eat some humble pie right now. Nope. You can believe this all you want. I don't fault you for that. But what did Micah expect in saying that? Like, do either of you know anyone who heard that yesterday and went, hell yeah, dude, he's right. Y'all aren't seeing it. They're really good. You know what I mean? It just sounds so tone deaf, which is the problem with this organization in many different ways.
Well, although you say tone deaf, he's not deaf. Clearly, he's paying attention to his head coach in meetings.
We have established a championship program. It's just not the world championship yet.
I mean, they're reading from the same talking points, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, like, you get so deep in the rabbit hole of, like, crap that you reach the point where somebody says, well, what do you expect them to say? And I guess that's, halfway true here. But it's just a matter of, man, y'all just need to go away for a while. Like, we just need to not hear anything from any of you. You've got to let this marinate, man. You've got to let everybody calm down because this is different. And I do think that this is different from Micah. We can make jokes about how they didn't accomplish anything serious in his previous 3 years with the team. But the reality is all Micah has ever known as far as being a Cowboy is success, is going to the playoffs and dominating people. He's not having an individually great year. And I can bet you anything that they're going to use that against him in contract negotiations. They're going to say, well, you didn't take these games over. You let your buddy, CJ Stroud, kind of go up and down the field against us. Why should we pay you like this? So these moments are going to come back home to roost one way or another, whether he realizes that or not.
Well, and the embarrassment tour continues because, Dan Quinn is licking his chops and he wants to embarrass. He would love to just crush the Cowboys this week. And that's what's driving everybody right now. They see that the Cowboys are down and they want to just pound them.
You guys have both seen Space Jam, right? Like I know that this reference is not completely lost on you. You remember how the bad guy, the leader of the Monstars or whatever, how he wanted to capture Michael Jordan and he wanted to, kind of imprison him and have people go beat him in one-on-one basketball. Remember the cartoon drawing of a kid going up stairs to dunk and Jordan just being trapped? That's who the Cowboys are. They're just everybody's opportunity to feel good about themselves, to stand tall. They are the Washington Generals and everybody else is the Harlem Globetrotters. And that's exactly who the Washington Commanders are going to be on Sunday. That's exactly who the New York Giants are going to be on Thanksgiving Day. They exist. They're a homecoming game. That's who the Dallas Cowboys are right now.
Wow.
A homecoming
The
game.
homecoming game.
That's a great reference.
Absolutely. Although those are games where you're going to win, not where you're trying to embarrass those guys. I mean, it's interesting because in the fact that the Cowboys aren't even competitive, although Micah did say outside of the 14 points they gave up in the first quarter and the 14 in the fourth, they only gave up 6. I mean, that's something that they should. I mean, those were words out of the dude's mouth. I couldn't believe it. Oh, outside of that, man, that was great. But in reality, and you were at the stadium. So, and when you go to games, you miss everything that's going on television and maybe some nuances. But I know you're a degenerate. You've probably watched that entire game 3 times since then. Probably watched the main broadcast, the Manning cast, and the Spanish version, just to see everything. There were some bright spots in that game. And I'm at the point now I want to see some young players that I didn't expect to see, and I didn't want to see, frankly, but can they do well? That Spanford guy looks like he could become a player. There are a couple of guys like that you go, all right, let's see. And I'm at the point where I want to see all those guys. Let's see all these young guys they talked about. Let's see what they can actually do in an NFL game.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's what's maddening is that they just do that, right? They're, God bless them. But, today it was reported that they've opened the practice window for Brandon Cooks. Brandon, respect and enjoy your life. Seriously, enjoy your pilot's license and all that stuff. But we really don't need to see this. Do you even want to do this, Brandon? What, you know what I mean? That's weird. So I'm with you. Brevin Spanford was one of the highest paid undrafted free agents. The only place where the Cowboys will spend money because it's, a fraction among pennies. Let's play Trey Lance. You know what I mean? What are you so afraid of? And that, honestly, to go back to Joe's point about they need to do something dramatic, I think they just have to do something. They have to get rid of this fear. My cohort who runs our Philadelphia Eagles site, he used to say this about the Eagles before they obviously won the Super Bowl, is they were so afraid of doing this. And he would always respond with, what are you afraid of? Not winning the Super Bowl? Like nothing's going to change. Like you realize that literally every single year. And so if you're the Cowboys, like, what are you afraid of? What is paralyzing to you that you don't want to wave the white flag, so to speak, and let Trey Lance start? That you don't want to zig where you've been zagging for so long? Is it simply arrogance? Is it really just yours? Or is there something that you are deathly afraid of, that you are so insecure of that you won't tell anybody about?
Well, I don't know what that would be, RJ, honestly, because, I mean, they've got to be pretty embarrassed right now, Jerry and Mike and everybody, over what's been happening. I'm with you. And Mike McCarthy says, Cooper Rush is the starter this week, but we're going to have some packages for Trey Lance. Honestly, what is the point of that? Unless you're going to stick that guy as a running back, and maybe he can do better than what they've got right now. I just don't understand the point. So I agree with you in that. Trey Lance ought to be under center drive one in Washington.
What I would offer, and this isn't my personal conspiracy theory, but it's a popular one on the internet, is that Trey represents the carrot. Trey represents what people like you, people who are on the radio, people who are on television can say. The Cowboys need to start Trey Lance. The moment they burn that is the moment, that they kind of play their get out of jail free card. Because what happens after they play Trey and he sucks? Nobody's jumping on any show, in the middle of December saying, I tell you what, they got to play Will Grier. You know what I mean? Like Trey is the last bit of optimism that you dangle and thing you can talk about and argue over. And I mean, I used to push back that all they cared about was money and making headlines, but I don't know how you can witness what they've been doing as of late and come to any other conclusion as sad as it is.
Very true. RJ Ochoa, bloggingtheboys.com here on the Blitz. Now, I've got a theory, RJ, I want to run past you.
All right.
Because everybody keeps saying fire Mike McCarthy. And I think we all know Mike McCarthy is out after this season. Michael Irvin is campaigning for Deion Sanders. One of the reasons I think that Jerry Jones will not fire Mike McCarthy in the middle of this season, at least right now, is punishment. He is not going to send Mike McCarthy home 2 months early. Hey, Mike, go enjoy Thanksgiving at your family's house in Green Bay or wherever they choose to live. If I've got to watch this, you've got to watch this. I'm not letting you off the hook.
I kind of buy that to some degree. I think for what it's worth, I do think the Cowboys front office is that vindictive. But I don't subscribe to it with all of me. Because I get that tweet 10 times a day. Like I bet Mike doesn't make it to Thanksgiving. First of all, what on earth have they ever done in the 21st century that suggests to you that they won't tolerate mediocrity? Jason Garrett was the head coach for a decade. So, I mean, again, how can you possibly come to the conclusion that they have a threshold where enough is enough? Beyond that, and I think this is the kind of primary meat of my point, they're not going to pay Mike McCarthy to not work. And that's probably why they ran this whole thing back, because they don't want to burn that. They can talk about how they would write any check to win the Super Bowl whatsoever, but they are not going to do that. And they're not going to fire him because they would have to work harder. Even if it's fractionally harder, they would have to walk 10 feet further down the hallway to Mike Zimmer's office or John Fossil's office for their weekly powwow to tell them, you better not start Trey Lance because I need Joe Reinagle on San Antonio Sports Star saying how we got to start him on Monday or whatever the case may be. So I think it's just, laziness. I really think that's ultimately what it is. And I think that's why they brought Mike McCarthy back. Because so what happens if it goes poorly? What consequences are they going to face?
So my question then is, look, I don't think anybody listening or anybody on the planet thinks that Mike McCarthy will be back next year with this team. I think the players would revolt, to be quite honest with you. Not that he's lost them, but I just think a change is needed. So who's it going to be, RJ?
I don't think that they'll cede the necessary control to get somebody like Ben Johnson. I think that he would probably be number one on most people's kind of candidates list. I think a popular kind of archetype is like a Mike Vrabel, someone who's been a head coach, who's had some levels of success, but isn't a big enough dog to where they can't, stand taller and firmer over him. I know people have their fun on the internet suggesting Jason Witten. I wish that I could say that I think that's impossible. I really do. I really wish that I could say that I think it's impossible, but I can't. I mean, I simply can't. I think Bill Belichick makes sense to entertain. I mean, you'd be stupid to not talk about, in a serious sense, the greatest coach of all time if he's interested. And you'd be stupid to not see any level of control. And that goes back to my point that people say, well, I don't want Belichick to touch the draft. Why? What are you so afraid of? You think you ready for Will McClay to touch another Mozzie Smith? Like that's what you want to, prevent from happening or keep happening, I should say. And finally, the Dion thing. I mean, I'm not going to doubt Dion. Obviously, the success he's had speaks for itself, and so this isn't about that. But there are going to be a million people who just buy logic and who say the Cowboys need to draft Shador and all this crap, and they're going to ignore reality and that the Cowboys can't do that and all this kind of stuff. And I think from a practical standpoint, that isn't possible. But I will say, Jason, you mentioned how Michael Irvin is campaigning for him. No offense to the playmaker, who is far greater and knows far more about football than I ever will, and obviously a great friend of the station. But that being said, Michael Irvin, dude, maybe back off a little bit. Like, maybe quit stirring the pot for this team that you say that you love and you want to be successful so much yourself, because that's all that's doing right now.
But and I'll defend Michael on this one. One, I know him well enough to know that if somebody didn't want that out, like Dion, Michael wouldn't be saying it. Two, Jerry loves to stir the pot because we're talking about him, and Michael will drive that conversation. This is part of the plan. It ain't going to happen, but this is part of the plan.
Sure, and maybe this is just leverage for Dion's deal with the Raiders when they trade up to draft Shador, right? Like, maybe it exists for that purpose, but it is. I think, and I don't want to speak for you, Jason, but I think you would agree. My favorite person right now, my favorite ambassador for the Dallas Cowboys is Troy. Because Troy understands I'm going to do what I can and I'm going to use my vehicle to help the success of the team. I'm not necessarily accusing Michael of not doing that, but Troy's the only person right now who will drag them and call them out and use his platform to say, this needs to be better. And I think that advocating for someone like Dion right now is only creating headlines. And that's going to happen on its own, obviously, because of who Dion is and who the Cowboys are. It's just, again, I don't think that it's difficult to suggest that Dion's only going somewhere where he can coach his son, and that can't happen with the Cowboys. So from a logical perspective, we can rule that out very clearly. But of course, that's not going to stop people from suggesting.
Well, I mean, let's face it. If what everybody says is true, and Jerry is only interested in making money, that would be the ideal move for Jerry to make money.
And to be clear, I'm not necessarily even against the idea of Dion, because, and I don't think anybody should be at this point. And I've mentioned this before. I think of the line from the 40-year-old virgin when Steve Carell saying, "Look, I've been trying this, and I'm not having success, but I don't want to do anything else because it doesn't feel right." And his coworker says, "Dude, right hasn't been working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's time to try some wrong." And so, right now, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you have absolutely no right to act like you're too good, whether it's for Dion or Belichick or Ben Johnson or whatever. You need all of the help you can get. And that's kind of the first step here, is admission of that. But obviously, we've been waiting for almost 3 decades for that to be the case.
Speaking of needing help, and we've got a long off season to really go over this, but without thinking about it, right now, what is the biggest need? What is the biggest hole that the Cowboys have to take care of with that high draft pick they are going to get?
It's boring, but offensive line.
There you go.
Especially Zach
and that
Martin's
takes Shador Sanders right out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it's Shador is just not a realistic option for them. Again, you can follow the money, and I will. I know you're running short on time. This is why, to be clear, I'm not out on Dak by any stretch. But this situation, this hypothetical conversation, is why you do the Dak deal as soon as you possibly can, because it buys you options and time down the road. If they had done the Dak extension ahead of the 2023 season, almost 2 years ago, they'd be well into that by now. Again, I'm not saying they could get out of it, but it would be easier to get out of. You always do these massive, fundamental, cornerstone contract extensions the moment that you can, because A, the price is as low as it's ever going to be, and B, it buys you time. That's why the Eagles got the Wentz deal, the Rams got out of the Goff deal. You just don't have that time right now. You're not off the runway yet relative to the Dak extension. And if you had done it a lot earlier, like we told you to, you would have more opportunities.
Got to do something drastic, RJ. I'm looking for something drastic, something off the wall. Got to do it. Trade Micah Parsons.
I don't think you can say that that's the dumbest idea ever right now. I mean, I will offer that it kind of makes sense because you already have lost one of the years that you could have gotten the extension in, right? You've already squandered doing this in the most efficient way possible. Forget the off the field stuff. If that does bother you, I'm not going there. But I totally think that you should consider that because he's your most valuable trade and your most tradable valuable trade asset. And you should highly consider that because you need a lot of help. But again, it all relies and all rests on admitting that you have a problem to begin with.
RJ Ochoa, read him at bloggingtheboys.com. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. Wednesdays are always fun, RJ.
I think you're both fun, and I don't know if I'll be back next Wednesday. I don't know your holiday schedule because I'm a bad friend, I suppose. But if I don't talk to you, I'm extraordinarily grateful for both of you, your friendship, your mentorship, and I wish you a very happy, safe, blessed Thanksgiving, that you eat all the turkey, all the tryptophan, all the mac and cheese, and all the pecan pie.
Pecan, not pecan.
Good Lord, here we
No,
go.
because I'm not stupid, Joe. Just
Here we go.
Just be cool one time. Joe.
Okay,
One,
all right.
One singular time.
All right.
Here we go.
Appreciate you, RJ.
Go Texans.
RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com, our original Rock the Mic winner here on the Blitz, 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star.